This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Today on Voices of Gray, we're going to look back at a couple of examples in Gray County's history of two topics that have impacted our lives over the last few months since COVID-19 hit. The first is long-term care, and the second is the need for isolation in order to reduce transmission of infectious diseases. How did Gray County tackle these issues over 100 years ago? Gray County's commitment to caring for the aged goes back at least 116 years when the county built the Gray Owen Lodge, which opened on June 24, 1904. The House of Refuge, as it was known, was designed to house the county's poor and indigent. Before this time, the only place available to a homeless person was the county jail in Owen Sound. 50 acres of land was purchased from John E. Marsh on the Glenelg side of the Toronto-Sydenham Road, just south of Markdale, and a lodge was built of red brick. Though most of the residents were elderly, they were put to work on the surrounding farmland to help produce food for the lodge. A small barn was built in 1904 and was expanded and updated over the years. In May of 1943, 100 adjoining acres were acquired, and the home had on the property over 30 cattle, 35 pigs, and about 80 hens. The site was also used to grow oats, hay, turnips, vegetables, and animal feed. By 1944, the lodge was known as the Gray County Home for the Aged and Infirm and celebrated its 40th anniversary. The lodge was in operation from 1904 until 1998 and saw many changes over the years. The Gray Owen Lodge building was eventually demolished, and the site was reused for the current Gray Gables long-term care facility. Since COVID-19 hit, we've all become familiar with the term self-isolation. 100 years ago, the term quarantine was more commonly used for people with infectious viruses like tuberculosis, measles, and smallpox. They were contained together in large homes or specially built sanatoriums. There, people could stay away from the community for prolonged periods of time while they recuperated. Such was the case with Meaford's Pest House, located on what is now Highway 26, just outside of Meaford's town limits. The house and farm was then owned by Dr. Clark. The Pest House was used as an isolation shelter for people infected with smallpox. The first outbreak in Meaford was in 1913, but it was a relatively weak strain of the virus, and thankfully no one died. Some people stayed in tents east of the house, while the sicker patients stayed inside the building for the duration of their isolation. There was a large sign next to the road warning the public that the property was used for people under quarantine. There was a great fear of smallpox, and farmers going by would gallop their horses to pass as quickly as possible. When the outbreak was discovered, every school child had to be vaccinated in order to attend classes, and local citizens tried to determine how the disease had been brought in, likely a family that had recently moved to town from the USA. Due to the mildness of the outbreak, the citizens figured no lives were in danger, so a baseball team was organized at the Pest House to help pass the time. The patients had 3 meals a day, and everybody, if able, had to do their own housekeeping. They could wander over the farm grounds but not leave it. The townspeople took food and clothing out to the Pest House and would leave their parcels on a rock pile for someone from the house to retrieve. Before a patient was discharged, everything belonging to them was burnt, except for the clothing they left in. In later years, the house reverted back to a private residence. Okay, so in 1998, when the Gray Owen Sound Lodge, which is the former House of Refuge in Markdale, was demolished, they found this time capsule in a cornerstone of the building. And inside this box, they found several coins between 1 penny and 25 cents. And the coins date from between 1894 to 1901. And so we've got a 50-cent coin from 1892 and a 1-cent penny from 1902 and a 25-cent coin also from 1902. And it's very interesting that they put the time capsule in there in 1904 when the Grey Owen Sound Lodge was built, and when it was torn down to be used as what's now today Grey Gables in 1998. This was a great find, and they've since donated it to Grey Roots as part of the permanent artifact collection.
For Sir George Etienne Cartier, the work of uniting Canada was as vast as the country itself. First, he won over Quebec.
Union is the only way forward.
No, Monsieur Cartier. Confederation will cost French Canadians their nationality.
Monsieur, together we will form a political nationality independent of our origins.
Diversity will be Canada's strength.
Then he fought for Manitoba.
The Northwest has formed a government under Louis Riel. We will not join Confederation unless our rights are respected.
So you want a new province? Then you'll have it. There will be a place for your people in Canada.
He envisioned a country from Atlantic to Pacific.
British Columbia won't even think of joining Canada without a wagon road through the Rockies.
Ask for a railway. We are building a country, after all.
Bold as a lion, Confederation could not have happened but for him. Le Canada, son pays, ses amours.
Be sure to tune in to Grey County Life on Rogers TV.
It's your favorite lifestyle magazine show on Rogers TV.
Are you the type who would keep going or stop? It's not easy to stop when you have an addiction. Legalizing cannabis won't stop addiction. It trivializes its consumption. Let's be vigilant. If you need help, visit portage.ca.
Hello, I'm Stephanie McMullen from Grey Roots Museum and Archives. And on today's episode of Voices of Grey, we'll be speaking with Jennifer Cornell, Grey County's Director of Long-Term Care. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks so much for having me here.
Well, we just learned a lot about the history of long-term care in Grey County, and it stretches back more than a century. But it sure has changed over the course of the last century, hasn't it?
It really has. When I started with Grey County almost 10 years ago, I was really interested to learn about the House of Refuge in Markdale, known as Grey Owen Lodge, and now Grey Gables, and the Lee family, and Lee Manor, and Rockwood Terrace in Durham. And so the one thing that hasn't changed is the Grey County community's dedication to looking after people. It's something that has been a part of our fabric of our community for well over 100 years.
One of the things that was interesting to me was in a 1940s retrospective, they talked about how many staff they had at the Grey Owen Lodge and how many residents. And it was, I think we can say, a fairly skeletal staff. They had about 5 people working. But we have more than that in our homes today, of course, because we take a much broader approach to care, do we not?
We do, and it's interesting because in those care days in the 40s, the residents that lived in Grey Owen Lodge participated very actively in the running of the home. People that lived there worked on the farm, they looked after the animals, they worked in the kitchen, they helped with the cleaning, and it was just a different way of kind of providing that long-term care and that support. Where today, the residents that move in really need 24-hour nursing care, and not just nursing care, that holistic approach. And so it really takes a huge team of people to support holistically someone living in long-term care, from the nursing department, which is PSWs, personal support workers, registered nurses, to the housekeeping team, dietary team, and the recreation team, the team that supports the residents in not just their healthcare needs, but also their emotional well-being.
That's certainly something that I've gotten to see up close recently, and the way that your teams function is very impressive.
Thank you. I'm really proud of Grey County Long-Term Care, and I mentioned the 3 homes. We look after 316 residents from Grey County, from broader than just the Grey County boundaries. Our promise in Grey County long-term care is to color it your way. And those are just our words for resident-centered care. And I'm glad that you had a chance to be a part of that. And maybe I can share a little bit of context as to why that was. So here we are, 6 feet apart, because we're in the middle of a global pandemic, COVID-19 virus. And long-term care has probably been one of the most impacted populations, seniors and people living in congregate settings. And so there was a lot of strategies that needed to be put into place to make sure that we were looking after and being as safe as we could to support and protect the people that live in congregate settings. And so early on, when we weren't exactly sure what this pandemic was going to look like and how we were going to be impacted, we started looking for support within the Grey County organization. And the team from the museum and economic development and tourism, you were really quick to put your hand up and say, I'll do some training and I'll come and help however I can in long-term care. And we're so grateful for that. And I'm interested to know about what you thought about that experience.
It was very much, as you say, an unknown. I know that we wanted to help. It makes things less scary when you can help. And so we dove into our tasks, whichever home we were assigned to, and I happened to be assigned to Lee Manor. And it was a little overwhelming, but very quickly I saw both the efficiency of how the home is run and the compassion between staff, between residents. The relationships were incredible. Everyone cares. And that coming in as an outsider was enormous. It made me feel more comfortable. It made me feel more supported. But most importantly, I learned so much from everyone there, and it was an incredibly positive experience.
Well, I'm so glad. And that's something that I've loved about long-term care for my whole career, is that whether it's what they called the residents inmates in the early days in the 1900s to our residents, every single one of those people is an individual with a story to tell. And we have that opportunity in long-term care to hear those stories and to nurture those stories. And it really is one of the most fulfilling parts of working in long-term care. There were a lot of strategies that were already in place in our long-term care homes and broadly across the province, because we anticipate and prepare for influenza season every year. And so we were ready-ish for COVID-19. And then when the WHO declared a global pandemic early in March, the directives started coming from Public Health Ontario and the Ministry of Long-Term Care, and we needed to identify and quickly make some changes that we maybe hadn't anticipated. For example, a lot of our staff work in more than one long-term care home, and so early on we recognized that we needed to limit that. That contributes to the potential spread of the virus from one home to another. And so that was another reason that we really appreciated the support from the teams outside of long-term care, willing to come in and help us out. We started requiring everyone to change their uniform as soon as they arrived and before they left. We do active screening. And so people will be seeing that in other circumstances, that they go to the dentist office or they go to the doctor's office and they have to answer a screening tool. And so we do that with our staff on their way in, including taking their temperature, and on their way out. And we do active surveillance of the residents as well. So we're really watching for symptoms and doing what we can to prepare and prevent the chance of spread if someone was to have symptoms. The other really interesting piece is that whether it's interesting or impactful was the unprecedented restriction of visitors into long-term care. And so that's where your team also played a really significant role. was using technology to help our residents stay connected outside of the home. And our IT department helped us create what we call the Color It Connect program. And so did you participate in that a little bit?
I did. One of my colleagues from the museum was a pro at it, so Barb really led the charge on our floor with that, but I did facilitate some of those calls too.
Yeah, people that have never really picked up an iPad or a computer were suddenly having video conferences with their loved ones. And I know my grandmother lives in a retirement home, and she has never done a video call, and about a week and a half ago, we set her up with a tablet, and she did her first video call, and it was a chance for her to see a couple of family members that she hasn't seen in almost 6 months. And the pure wonder of the fact that you could do that using technology and the joy at seeing someone really was wonderful to be a part of. It's the impact, the socialization impact is the isolation has been really a challenge, one of the biggest challenges with COVID-19. And so our homes are working really closely within the rules from the Ministry of Long-Term Care to be able to bring people together with their loved ones. And so we've just started a pilot project called the Designated Care Partner Program. And that's where each resident identifies 2 people who will be their essential caregivers. And we provide them with training very similar to what a staff member receives. And that they receive their training. They also have to be tested for COVID-19 and every 2 weeks and have a test to having had a negative test. And then they're able to come into the home and be at the resident's bedside supporting their care. And we're keeping a close eye on the impact of reuniting people with their loved ones. And we're really seeing an improvement in residents' overall well-being. And so we're working through that project and really excited to have the opportunity to do that.
That's really great news. I know that when I was at Lee Manor that the residents, they understood generally that these measures were there to keep them safe, and that it was a difficult time for everyone, but of course you miss your family.
Yeah, we have social workers that support the care in each of our homes, and one of the social workers has found through the Ontario Association of Residents' Councils, so it's a group that supports residents' councils, a document to make sure we're improving our communication with the residents. And she's been meeting with the residents and asking them their story. What did they find most difficult about COVID so far? What did they think that the organization did really well or the home did really well? And what did they think we could do better if we were to have to put in those kinds of restrictions again? And the answers have been really interesting, and that's really important that we listen. That's the biggest part of, I think, providing good care, is that we're listening to the residents and what their experience is asking for and what kind of care they need. And being able to be with their loved ones and interact with their loved ones was a big part of what we were hearing. And some of the things that we were worried about, we had to change the way we did some of our activities. We would do large group activities, now we're doing small group. The residents were okay with that. They thought that hallway bingo was very innovative and kind of fun and a new way of doing something and filling their time. The other piece of information that I think is very similar to what you were talking about in the 40s, where the residents really participated in the running of the home, our residents today are saying they want to be busy, they want to have purpose. And so how do we support them in what that looks like? How do they be a part of the strategies that we're doing? Helping people get their pump of hand sanitizer on the way into the dining room, that type of thing. That's what they were looking for.
That's really great that they have a chance to be able to verbalize and share their experiences, because it does help if, God forbid, we ever end up in this kind of situation again. And from a historical perspective, 100 years from now, people are going to be writing books. They're going to be doing exhibits, and having that material available to future historians is also great.
Yeah, that is, I hadn't even thought of that really 100 years from now. Yeah. What kind of a role did the residents play in COVID-19 and in that response to the pandemic?
It's certainly something. We're doing an exhibit on the Spanish flu for when Grey Roots reopens, and looking through source material that we have available. Unfortunately, we seem to have a vacuum of material for personal experiences in the Spanish flu pandemic, and how did people feel about it when they were going through? What do they wish they could have done or been involved with? And so from a historical standpoint, having that for the future is really, it's going to be a great tool to help inform other people in the future.
Well, and I think it'll help us as we plan for what does the future of long-term care look like. Something that we struggled with in long-term care prior to the pandemic was having enough health human resources, enough people in our rural setting who are interested in working in long-term care and health even more broadly. And so we have an opportunity now to change the narrative of what does being a helper look like, what are the opportunities that exist in working in long-term care, and how might that change as a result of the pandemic. So if we know that limiting people from working in more than one location, that means there are opportunities to change the way work looks so that someone can work at one location and provide for their family and have a fulfilling career. So we have that opportunity now. And when we hear and listen to what the staff are saying from their experience and what are the residents saying, it helps us to build those communities in the future. We are redeveloping Rockwood Terrace in Durham. We're rebuilding a 128-bed long-term care home. And so we have this really valuable information to say, what could that community look like in Durham as a part of the fabric of the broader community? And so their thoughts and ideas and stories are really key to moving forward.
I think you just hit the nail on the head, that sense of community. I think that really encapsulates what I saw on the floor that I worked on, that staff and residents had different roles in the relationship, but they were a community moving forward.
Yeah, providing care, and in particular intimate care, it really is a relationship, and it's listening every moment. It's not making an assumption that the way the care was done yesterday is the way the care might be done today and might be done tomorrow. And that's part of the nuance of being a caregiver. The opportunity to inspire young people to get into such a fulfilling career is really exciting to me. We have this chance, better now than we maybe ever had, to say, there's a really fulfilling career opportunity here, and you can be a part of the community. What's interesting is that I think every home area is its own community. The home itself is a community, and it's part of that broader, greater community in Markdale, Owen Sound, and Durham. And the other thing that I've been so not surprised by, but impressed and so grateful for, is the outpouring of support from that broader community for our frontline workers, our caregivers, for the residents. Early on, there was a clinic of leaders in Markdale that started a campaign promoting kids to draw pictures and letters and drop them off at the long-term care homes. And it started with our 3 county homes, and it quickly expanded to all 19 long-term care homes in Grey Bruce. Wow. And they were receiving cards and letters that were full of hope and joy, especially early on when we really weren't sure what this looked like and weren't sure how it was going to go. And those kinds of community support, from cards and pictures to treats and coffee and meals, to signs saying, you know, we support our frontline, our essential workers. It's really been an honor to be a part of that. And really, I'm really grateful for the support that the community has given.
It has been, as someone who was on the ground when those kinds of support were coming in, it was incredible to see the community rally around, and everyone appreciated it. There was a parade in Owen Sound, and it was emergency support work, or not emergency support, but emergency services, and they did a parade in front of all of the homes, and boy, that was a hit. Everybody loved it.
I saw the video of that, and honestly, there wasn't a dry eye. It was just wonderful to be a part of something like that and to be recognized for that value. And the teams have really, at all levels, have really stepped in to say, what can I do? And they've really done an amazing job at looking after the residents, looking after each other, and being a part of that, care goal.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult several months here, but it has been incredible to see how the communities in Grey County pulled together to support one another.
I think we're well positioned for a potential second wave. I think we need not to be relaxed. We need to remain vigilant, and the things that we know that work are some of the hard things like physical distancing, masking, hand hygiene, and testing. Those are the strategies that we know, and so we'll remain vigilant while we slowly reintroduce some version of normal life back into our own lives and the lives of the people that we look after.
Yes, I think we still have interesting times ahead of us.
I think so. I think so. People have been really courageous, and I think really courageous is the right word, at forging into the unknown and doing the best that they can, and I'm really grateful for that. I think it's what makes Grey County long-term care as great as it is, and allows us to color it for each of the residents, is each staff, each team member kind of taking a breath and hitting that day head on and doing what they can, and I'm really proud of all of them for that.
Well, you have an amazing team. You really do. Today we have been very fortunate to have Jennifer Cornell, Grey County Director of Long-Term Care, in with us to talk about long-term care in Grey County, and particularly the last few months as we've been grappling with COVID and how it affects our communities. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Great, thank you.
Join us next time for another episode of Voices of Grey.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Hi, I'm Carol Merton. I'm the host of HealthLink. HealthLink connects home, community, and healthcare. Please join me for HealthLink on Rogers TV.
It was John's graduation. We were so proud. We all got together for a picnic. That's when we heard coming from the radio.